very out of the norm for me. It was like a new horizon, and I had to like have a conversation with self and give myself some grace because I was like halfway through the day, like, this is a hot mess, Brandy. Like, what? Like, how could you be so far off?
Wait a minute, wait a minute. I am happy to hear you say that you gave yourself some grace. I just need y'all to go ahead and be proud of my sister because I'm proud of her because giving herself grace is not something that she does too often. So, welcome to the world. Welcome to this new you. Keep giving yourself some grace.
You're gonna make me get teary-eyed, but thank you.
Welcome to the Brannon Files podcast.
I'm Brandy.
And I'm Shannon, also known as Brannon.
I'm the older sister.
And I'm the younger.
As Black women, we've had a lifetime of adventures, including world travel, navigating work, and adjusting to evolving family dynamics.
Join us as we dig deep into the files to share stories, experiences, and tips. Hey, girl, hey!
What it do, boo? What it do?
Another episode of the Brannon Files. We're here.
We are here in this place.
All right. So, Brandy, what have you navigated through since the last time we spoke?
Shoot, I don't know if navigated in past tense is what we're saying, or am I navigating? Because right now, my neck, my back, because,
Oh, a little
whew,
Kaya.
Lil Kaya. I mean, not the whole song, but Lil Kaya. Um, yeah, no, navigating recovery after a long flight. It's been a
Mm,
while since I've been on a very long flight, and my body is not recovering or reacting the same as it once did.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, like, even my feet swole on the shorter segment of the flight, which normally doesn't happen. So I'd already done just the short segment. Before I could even get to the long segment, the feet were swollen. So I was just like, okay. So, I took some precautions before the second flight. And then on the long flight, I was happy because I got a whole row to myself. So I was like, cool, I'll actually just lay down. So that'll be like,
An
at least I
entire
get the
row is
whole.
like flying, like, I don't know. It's like a flying like you're a celebrity in first class without actually being in first class.
True, because even the beds in first class don't totally lay down all the way. They are private, but they still have a little bit of I mean, they lay flat, but I feel like there's still a little tilt. But anyhow, yeah, but I didn't sleep as much on the way back as I did on the way there. On the way there, I was out. I did not have an entire row, but it didn't even matter because I don't know if I would have remembered anything that happened. I slept 12 of the 16 hours on the way there. That was great. Obviously, I must have needed it. But
When
on
you
the way
said long
back,
flight, you weren't joking.
no, I wasn't.
That's
That's what I was
12
thinking.
of 16 hours. And that's like
Yeah,
one, like no layover, just all in
no.
the air.
Yes. And that was like, also it's one of the first times I've traveled that far from the West Coast. So it
Uh,
is one of the longer flights I've been on in my life in general. And I just forget how traveling from the West Coast is totally different than traveling from the East Coast. So maybe I guess the better navigation is just long travel overall. Long flights overall is what I've been kind of navigating.
so
And so yes,
LA to Dubai, Abu Dhabi.
well, LA to Saudi with a
Oh,
connection, but the connection itself was 16 hours and
yeah.
then another 3.5 hours to Dubai. So that's like what, a whole day of travel essentially. Um, when you add it all up. Yeah.
Yeah. That's quite a lot. So I'm glad you were able to take some of the precautions after you realized that maybe you didn't do what you should have done at first.
Yeah. Well, because I never needed it for what I call a short flight for 3.5 hours, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so then on the way back, what I was going to say is just that I did get to lay down, but when I got home, my back was hurting, like hurting bad, and I just think it was just all the sitting and just the travel in general. So had a couple of trips to a little chiropractor, a little acupuncture, kind of all the things, trying to get myself back balanced and right. But fingers crossed. So far, the jet lag part has been doing pretty good. I haven't been struggling too bad, so I'm gonna hope that that keeps up.
Yeah, I know we don't normally do this in this part, but I just want to know. I'm sure people are kind of wondering, like, what are the precautions? Like, what did you do or didn't you do that made the
Oh.
difference?
Oh, see, I was trying to stay on script because I didn't want to get in trouble. Y'all, she be coming for me off the screen, okay? She comes for me.
But I
Um,
mean, you put it out there, so I'm gonna ask the questions that the people want to know.
Compression socks, compression socks, compression socks. Yeah, I see that I need them for every flight now, probably no matter how long or short. And the other thing is, sadly, your girl's been dealing with high blood pressure. So I'd taken my medicine, don't get me wrong, but I have such a small dose. I did take an extra dose even a little bit earlier than I normally would have because I obviously knew that I had like probably like some swelling and things like that. So I took another blood pressure pill, not back to back. It was spread out, but just a little bit sooner than I normally would have before I got on that second long flight, right? To make sure that I was taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, we getting up there. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
man.
these are tips no matter what your age is, but as we get a little older, we got to do some of these things like more diligently than we had been before when we were not the current ages that we are.
Exactly. Life in your 40s, life in your 40s. But yes, to your point, compression socks should be at all ages because it's a very good safety precaution when flying. So y'all got an
And
extra tip of the day because that is not the tip for today. But
but
go ahead.
and for flying that long, you got to get up.
Oh yes. Oh yes, 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 yes. You do have to get up. Since we're giving all the tips early today. Yeah, no, it's fine. I got up several times. So that was not it. I had followed those directions like no problem. Although I should say that, but on the way there, obviously I didn't get up that much because I was asleep for 12 hours. But
Fair.
I I did have an exit row and I did have a bag and I put my bag in front of me because I had a lot of room. So I did have my feet elevated some. So that
Oh,
also is
elevation.
yeah, elevation. Yeah.
Elevation in the elevation.
Right? Gotta elevate. So yeah. What about you? I've been talking a lot. What have you
It's all
navigated through
right.
since the last time
I
we were
was
together?
curious about these things.
We haven't
Uh,
even oh, but I'll just say we haven't even gotten to catch up as sisters because I've been gone for like 10 days. And so we haven't really gotten to talk. So y'all
this is
getting to see
true.
kind of what the live catch up is, what a normal conversation would be between the two of us.
Yeah, when we're not recording, this is still us. It's
Yeah.
like this is what we do. So I've been navigating a lot in my head. I was like, but more so I'm gonna take a like kind of a note from your page, like of the travel part, because I've been traveling mostly lately. So I've been going back and forth between Atlanta and Nashville quite frequently. And so like while that's a drive that I've known, because like I went to college
Yeah,
in
you know it.
Nashville.
And
Yeah,
I live in
and
Atlanta. So
you lived in Atlanta, and then at the time, I lived in Atlanta and still would go back to Nashville right after graduation. So, like, this is a very familiar drive to me. But I've recognized now, speaking of maybe it's age, maybe it's just, a change in my preferences, that I prefer to drive during the day. Like, I
not you.
do not want to drive at night. I mean, your girl's got a little bit of a lead foot, and at night, you can't see the popo. So, I wanna be
I
able
mean
to
facts.
know when that when there's something ahead. There's all like, I use Waze sometimes, and that's cool, and, like, other people might tell you that the police are ahead, but I wanna use my own eyes and see what's coming, whether it's the police or something that I need to swerve from or whatever. I just recognize that, like, I drive into Nashville typically in the evening, and I try to leave early enough so that, like, it's dusk when I get there
Right.
instead of it being, like, dark. And then I typically leave, like, in the morning, and that drive is so much smoother. A, traffic is better because everybody else is going into the city and I'm headed out of the city, so that's cool. And then B, like I said, I can see, like, going through
Yeah.
the mountains, and it's a pretty drive, like, going
It's a
around
very
Chattanooga.
pretty drive. Like when you curve around, like you said, the Chattanooga part is real nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just all around better during the day. So I've been navigating that switch up of preference in driving at night to driving during the day.
I've been on that daytime driving. So, like, I switched over to that a long time ago. But, I don't know, you peripherally, you're not having problems, but wearing compression socks driving isn't a bad idea either because your legs are still kind of like just down in that same area and you're not really getting to elevate. And sometimes people do even swell during car travel. So, Just
I mean,
saying.
hey, while we're pushing compression socks, working from home or sitting at a desk, if you don't get up that often, your legs are still down in that position. You might just need to wear compression socks on a regular day.
Now, question, I know you can technically drive from Atlanta to Nashville without a break, but do you take a break just to stretch or no, not really?
Um, yes-ish, because I don't usually fill up my gas tank before I leave.
Okay.
So it's like a built-in stretch. It's intentional. If I had
Yeah.
filled up my gas tank before leaving, then I wouldn't need to stop. So I just don't I whatever gas I've got is what I've got and I get on the road and then I'll stop whenever like, not when my gas tank is out, but when it's appropriate to stop and then when I feel like, okay, now would be a good time to, stand up a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like the drive from LA to Vegas is like about the same amount of time, and it's kind of what I've replaced my Atlanta to Nashville drive over here on the West Coast. So yeah, same. I usually do still like to try and fill up before I go, but yeah, if I'm drinking my water, my bladder is probably gonna make me stop anyway. So I might stop like one time on the way.
One time. Yeah.
One time. But yeah, okay. Well, I mean, y'all got a lot of extra tips early on today. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to talk to you about what we came to talk about. In today's episode, we're talking about tours, sightseeing, and cultural immersion. Be sure to listen all the way through for our episode tip about how to make the best of a city when you're short on time. Shannon, if you can only do one thing in a new place, what are you doing and how do you decide?
Ooh. Okay. So I know you like this too, but I might be stealing your thunder. Mm. I love street art. Like, I love murals that are commissioned and non-commissioned. Like, there's just something about the style of when an artist in a place like decides to create. And so if I can only do one thing in a place, I am definitely looking to see if there's any street art tours that I can take. If there aren't any that I can actually like sign up for, I'm also looking on like I've looked on like Google Maps sometimes they have tours that are already somebody else has done it, like another traveler has pinpointed places.
Okay.
Um like when I went to Bristol, UK, I definitely found like Banksy is from there and there was a Banksy street art tour, a walking tour that I just did on my own. And it was a great way to not only like explore the city, but also see the artwork that I liked. And I came up on a museum that also had his street art in there. Like it was really cool to do it that way. And then also,
Wait, sorry, can I interrupt you for 1 second? So you found
mhm,
that on Google? Like just
I think that's how I found it.
okay. Just asking.
It was just definitely a Google map that I used
Okay.
to go
Okay.
find the different Banksys around the city.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
And then in Berlin, I did a street art tour. Like sometimes there's just like free walking tours that you can take. And this one specifically was focused on street art and the Berlin Wall. And
Yeah,
like the
that sounds
the
cool.
tour guide, yeah, it was a great tour. And the tour guide took us to like this artist community that it was kind of off the beaten path. I don't think he brings every tour group there. He kind of asked us would we be interested in it and everybody was like, "Yeah." And it was there was more street art inside of this community and so yeah, it was that's my go-to is really trying to find like where are the artists. Now I am not an artist in that way. I'm crafty, but I'm not like a fine artist. And so it's really cool to me to see somebody else's talent like displayed and appreciated.
So okay, I need to ask you a couple of questions. So one is how much walking was like on this like tour? Because sometimes I worry a little bit like, am I gonna be walking for miles and miles or were you prepared for it? Was it casual? Like how did all the walking feel?
That's a good question. I usually when I travel, I try to wear comfortable shoes just
Okay.
period
So no
because
stilettos out there on the tour?
no, I'm not rocking stilettos.
Okay.
um,
And then okay, go ahead and finish.
Oh, I was gonna say, so, if I have on a good, comfortable, like, gym shoe, sneaker, tennis shoe, depending on where you're from and what you call it,
Gym shoes.
um, I'm ready. Like, I'm already that's already part A. That's, like, my travel shoe. no matter what attire I have on, that's what I'm rocking when I'm traveling, so I can just get off the plane and go, especially if I only have, like, some hours, or get off the ship if I'm going on a cruise, or get off of the bus, like, whatever it may be, however I got there, I'm ready to hit the ground running. And then the tours usually will give you kind of an idea of
Okay,
how
that's what I
far.
wondered, if it gives you at least an
Yeah,
expectation, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, okay.
'Cause they'll also try to help you navigate if it's something the tour is accessible, like, even though it's
Mm.
considered a walking tour, depending on what cities you're in, if the streets are paved or if they're cobblestone, if they're really accessible. Yeah.
And then my other question is, do you tip these, free guides by locals? Because I feel like
Oh, yeah.
that's yeah.
You definitely like, it's free, so, like, they're getting the tip is going to them, and they give you a tour that's worthy of payment, like, you wouldn't get this type of tour anywhere else, and they're knowledgeable. They even though it's a free tour, it doesn't mean that you're getting, like, somebody who's just
And the
saying,
bootleg.
"Over there, over there." These are people who do this for a living, and they know what they're talking about.
Well, I mean, I 100% knew the answer, but I want everybody else to know. If you go on a free tour, tip the people. And to your point, like, I do feel like you get insider information. That's actually usually, to me, more in depth than some of the other broader tours that you go on. But that's just my
Yeah.
personal opinion.
And depending on who the tour guide is, the tour could be different if you took it
Yeah,
again,
that's
because
true.
they do kind of have a route that they go, but everybody adds their unique flavor, especially if if they're local to that city.
And then I think another cool thing about those is like you never know how many people are going to show up. Sometimes low key, you could end up on a private or semi-private tour. I know that's happened
Yeah.
to me before.
Well, yeah, the for my birthday, we did a street art bike tour, and I don't
Oh,
remember if we
yeah.
were supposed to be a private tour or not.
That is a good question. I don't know either, but
Uh,
it was just us.
yeah, it
Yeah.
turned out, and so we were able to also, like, we got to see all of the street art that we wanted to see, and then we also got to do some things that were like, "Hey, what's that down there? Like, I see another mural," and go that direction because we saw something, and we saw somebody actually creating a mural at the time, that we
Did. That was
walked up,
pretty
and that's
cool.
not part of the tour, like, our tour guide had no idea that somebody would
Yeah,
be
she didn't
out
even
there
plan that.
painting. Yeah.
That one was a good one too because we stopped for lunch too. Like it was just nice. It was a bike ride, so it definitely was like a ways, but the way it was broken up, I think that lunch in the middle kind of like made was a good break, and also it was right in a good street art area, and a lot of art was there. So
Well, yeah, that
it
was
was
another artist community,
yeah, it
like,
was like
the
it was
actual
good.
restaurant.
Yeah, so it's well thought out. Yeah, that one wasn't a free one though. I don't think.
No,
No, that
it wasn't a free
yeah.
one, but it still, like, falls in line with my if I can only do one thing in a city, that's what I'm doing. I'm going for
And
the
that was
street.
that birthday trip when she didn't wanna do anything and do anything, and remember, y'all? Okay.
It is that birthday trip, and you know who planned something very nice and catered to me? My sister, who's fabulous at planning these trips, and she's not for hire.
But no, it was a good one. That was the we had a lot of activities on that trip, though, but I still didn't feel like we came back not rested at the same time, you know what I mean? It was a lot of
Yeah,
activities, but we had some downtime.
yeah, and now, that's I guess the street art piece is really for the cities. Sometimes you
Yeah,
can find street art, or I wouldn't call it necessarily street art. Sometimes you can find murals, or I might switch that out for like other works of art in places that street art isn't as popular.
yeah, that's fair. I didn't think about that. Yeah, that is kind of, uh, destination specific, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. We enjoy talking with each other, but we also want to talk with you. Comment, subscribe, like, and follow at Brannon Files on YouTube, IG, and Facebook. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to know when we have new content to share. So what's yours? If you could only do one thing in a place, what are you going for?
Well, listen, I'm gonna take a chapter from your book. I'm gonna go a little bit off script. I'm not gonna answer that directly. But what I am gonna talk about is this one day that I had as a stopover on this trip that we just talked about at the top of the episode. I decided that I wanted to visit Saudi Arabia. Because when I was living in the Middle East, it was not women were not allowed to travel there by themselves, and I really wanted to see the entire Gulf. So now that it's opened up a bit, I was like, I'm gonna go to Saudi. So the reason I had the layover in Saudi Arabia, as you all heard, was because I flew Saudia Airlines so I could have this stopover. Now, normally, when I'm going on a one day stopover, I try and plan like very well what I'm going to do. And y'all, I was just living in the moment when I was in Dubai. And I've been really busy like leading up to this trip to Dubai. So like I just didn't do my normal, at least pre-planning. And I think one of the other things I asked, and we can get back to you, Shannon, like how do you decide? But you did say you look some of 'em up on Google or whatever. How I decide often is like asking friends who have been there, or just doing a Google search to see like what are the popular spots. So I did at least do the Google search, right? But like, mm, it wasn't a fail this one day, but it really wasn't my best. Like,
Okay, this doesn't come out very often. Like, normally, you are on it, especially when it comes to planning activities.
and
Okay,
especially a one day activity. So this was like
yeah.
very out of the norm for me. It was like a new horizon, and I had to like have a conversation with self and give myself some grace because I was like halfway through the day like, this is a hot mess, Brandy. Like what, like how could you be so far off?
Wait a minute,
We
wait a minute. I am happy to hear you say that you gave yourself some grace. I just need y'all to go ahead and be proud of my sister because I'm proud of her because giving herself grace is not something that she does too often. So, welcome to the world. Welcome to this new you. Keep giving yourself some grace.
You're gonna make me get teary-eyed, but thank you. When it's in the middle of 95 to 100-degree weather and you outside and you hot in the middle of just like nowhere, you're gonna either cry, break down, have a meltdown, or give yourself some grace. So I chose the grace and just chalking it up as a life lesson because I was like, it's hot, real hot. What I hadn't prepared for in all of my planning of the things that were nice to see in Saudi was that they still do old school, like old school Middle East slash Spain. They still have a siesta.
Ah,
So for all of the planning that I
what
did,
time were you there?
from 1 until about 5 o'clock, nothing was happening or open. I landed at about 8 a.m., but I needed to get to my hotel or whatever. So kind of by the time I got all settled, it was just before 10. And something told me, which is another reason to listen to your gut, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm,
Something told me to go ahead and ask for my free breakfast that morning because I knew I had a very early flight the next day and I wasn't going to get the free breakfast anyway. And I was like, that way I'll have the free meal that comes with it. I also knew the lounge was nice at the airport, so I wanted to get there early the next day, and then I could just be on my way for the day, right? But I kind of dilly dallied and didn't do it right away. So by the time I left the hotel, it was already like 11:45, let's say.
mm.
And I went for, and now the restaurant was closed because the restaurant was only open for breakfast. So I went to go eat. And so by the time I finished eating, it was like 12:50. And as I'm looking at on the Wi-Fi at the restaurant is when I'm realizing that all of this sightseeing that I plan to do at the museums close in 10 minutes, which is in
Mm.
another part of town. So anyhow, to answer that direct question of if I only can do one thing in a new place, I actually like to try and get a little overview of the city. I don't know if it's one like specific activity. There are specific activities I like to do on a vacation, but if it's one day, I kind of want to sightsee.
Yeah.
So I went to Old Town knowing that everything was going to be closed. Like I said, I had to just reframe this, but was like, wait a minute, that might be room for good pictures without all these people in it,
Oh, yeah.
you know? So I was like, okay, let me
That's
reframe.
making some lemonade out of lemons.
But it was still like 90 degrees to 100 degrees, 95 to 100 degrees. I was like, and where Saudi has opened up more and allows tourists in, and the other thing was interesting is like I'd asked my friends, I was like, oh my gosh, do y'all have an abaya I can borrow? Because I finally got rid of all of them. Like at
You
first I was gonna
did?
keep just one. I did, even my custom made ones, and I was gonna keep just one, but I was like,
Oh,
what would
wait,
I need
you
this
got rid of the
for?
customer bias?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Those are
Unless
like
there's unless there's one at mom and dad's house that I don't know about, but it ain't here. And I think
I
I got
mean,
rid of
I'm here for you keeping what brings you joy and Marie Kondo and all that business, but I just was like, "That was a souvenir." Those are the types of useful souvenirs that you keep.
especially when you're tall, because you can't really just go buy one off, the internet or whatever, that's probably gonna be the right link for you, and the quality is so different. There's one that I really wish I would have kept. But anywho, I talked to my friend and I was like, "Do you have one I can borrow because I'm going to Saudi?" And she was like, "Girl, you don't even need that anymore." She's like, and I was like, "Oh, okay." But what I did get was uh a custom when I went there to when I went to Dubai first. I did my stopover on the way back. So I got a custom made, we'll call it kimono style by a friend of mine who started a line when I was living over there. And it was black. So it looked abaya-ish, like it was covered, but it wasn't like an
Um,
actual abaya and it was open. So I got that. And I did have a shayla or a scarf or hijab, depending on, how where you are, where you call it, just to have with me just in case. And when I was walking through the old town, I did not see any women without their head covered. I covered mine. It's not because you had to, but I didn't feel comfortable not being covered. Felt totally safe, felt totally comfortable in the space. I just felt more comfortable covered is what I'm saying.
like being culturally respective, like
Yeah, being
like
respect, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, having cultural respect. So I felt better that way. Now there were a very couple of shops open, so that was like because they always in the old town is like where all the souks are. So I was just navigating anyway. Is the point of the story. And I got some dates because the one thing that my bestie told me, he was like, if you go to Saudi, he was like, get some dates. He was like, because Saudi dates are like no other dates. He's like, I know you like the ones in UAE, but Saudi dates are the thing. And I found a little date shop that was open
Did
on
they
my
taste
floor.
different?
um, they're sweeter.
Oh,
Well, they had, well, I shouldn't say that. They had several kinds, right? And I actually asked for the sweetest one they have. Like I was very
um,
specific, but I feel like they're a little bit meatier. They're definitely different. I don't know how to describe the difference, but also it was fresh date season. He had some fresh dates and like fresh dates. Y'all, they're nothing like a regular date. I don't even know how to explain it. They're yellow and hard. I actually have one, but I'm not going to go off camera right now, but maybe I'll post a picture or something. um and they're fibrous and more like an apple almost when you bite into them. They're hard. So
oh,
fresh
I've
dates are
I
one of
guess apparently I've never had a fresh date because that's not what I was thinking you were gonna say.
if you're in the middle, if you're not in the Middle East, you probably wouldn't have had them. So I was happy to get some of those. Yeah, anyway, I made lemons out of lemonade for this long story. And I did also, since everything was closed, I also like to add that some of the Google, I did use Google, and some of the stuff was completely wrong. Like, y'all,
Wrong.
some of the stuff has been shut down maybe since before the pandemic or the pandemic. So I thought there was one museum open. So I thought I would go there. It wasn't, but I found a coffee shop, which I'm going to call my oasis in the desert. After I've been walking and hot, and that was at the point of like close to meltdown of like me, like, why did I do this? Like, how could I be so wrong? It had AC and coffee,
Ooh.
and it made everything better. Yeah, and my phone was dying, and I think I'd forgotten my charger. Oh no, it wasn't. I forgot my charger. Another party foul. Like, I didn't bring my adapter on the whole
Oh,
trip, not just this part, the whole trip.
like
Like, y'all,
a converter or an
converter,
adapter for
well-known
plugs.
adapter for the plug. You don't need a
Yeah.
converter for most electronic items, just the app adapter. Y'all, when I tell you that this whole trip, by the way, was like I'd never been anywhere or lived overseas before, like in that country, knowing that they have a different plug, like I don't know where my mind was before. I did my best to get to the flight, I guess, but God watched out. Everything worked out just
Bring
as it
back
was.
that grace.
Yeah, listen, when I tell you God worked out everything, He did. I got my hair done when I was there, got my feet done when I was there. Like because I showed up looking, whoo, tragic. Like there's no reason I should have gone on
Wait,
vacation.
you got your hair and feet done in Dubai or you got your hair and feet
Okay.
done in Saudi?
In Dubai. Sorry, in Dubai. Yeah, on the front end of the trip. Yeah, Saudi was the back end. Anyhow, um, it all worked out. The coffee shop had he had a charger. I was burning up. He also spoke good English because a lot of people there's not as much English spoken in Saudi for sure. So I got to recharge, rest, and reset my brain and do that grace. So yes, overall it worked out. I would actually like to see Saudi again with a little bit better plan. And my thing is that yes, normally when I have one day, I do like to see the sites, but I usually have a plan going into one day rather
Okay,
than
thank
just
you.
kind of
Because I was
getting
about to say, now we let you go off script, but what was your one thing again?
my, to see as many cultural things as I can see, like maybe architecture we could call it, or just, and hopefully I'll find some street art along the way. But Street art was also one of my things. Yes. You didn't steal my thunder, but it is something that's important to me if it's especially in one day, because not like I really want to take a class or do something else cultural in that way.
Yeah.
It's time to dig into the files for today's tip.
Thanks for sticking with us through the whole episode to get this insider tip. Our tip for today is to get on the bus. So, we talked about walking tours and we talked about sightseeing in a city and we talked about street art. But there are ways that you can do all of this when you only have a short amount of time in a place by taking these double-decker bus tours. Most big cities have these, and even some of the smaller ones have something where you're able to get on a hop on and hop off. So, if you see something in the tour guide that you want to go see, or there's like cafes or restaurants or other things around a site, you get off at that stop and then they have multiple buses like going throughout the city. So you don't have to wait for that same bus to come back to you. You can use that as your mode of transportation. And it's a great way to see lots of things with not a lot of time or in one city.
And on top of that, they're usually a pretty affordable price. So it's usually a good way to have a set price of a way to get around a city because obviously you could get taxis or Ubers or things like that, but you know the set price if you do the hop on, hop off. I'd like to just bring this back to the episode that your girl didn't even look to see if they have one in Saudi. Like when I tell you I don't know what I was
Okay.
doing on this whole trip, like I don't. And I'm usually the one who is the biggest advocate for the hop on, hop off bus to anybody in any city at any time.
Yeah,
So,
these are things I learned from you.
right. So I
The
don't,
walking tour I learned from you, and the hop on, hop off I learned from you, but I just put it into practice, so I listen to
right.
what you say sometimes.
Ugh. You hear that sometimes at the end? Noted. But look, I'm gonna start need to listen to what I say myself, I think is what's gonna need to happen, or ask you to remind me of what I said because wow.
That's
So
what
yeah,
sisters are for.
that is what we are here for.
But yes, our tip is to get on the bus and utilize the hop on, hop off. And actually, if they don't have a hop on, hop off, some cities' actual city bus is another great way to do that. A lot of times there's like a main thoroughfare and it's pretty easy to navigate, and you can use that line to go throughout the city as well.
Or maybe a metro, depending on how big the city is. And on that note, a lot of them will have day passes. So you might be able to get like one pass that you can use for one price for the whole day or week.
Yes, and I said the bus for a specific reason, not the
Oh, okay.
metro, because you're underground when you're on the metro. You're above ground when you're on a bus, and so you actually still get to see the city. Like, you might not have a tour guide with you to tell you what you're seeing, but because you're above ground, you're getting a visual tour of the city, even if you don't have, the context for what you're seeing.
I'm gonna put a pin in that. It depends on what city you're in. The Dubai Metro is definitely all above ground. Um, and Portland has like streetcars, so it's not the bus, but it's like a tram metro thing, and those are also all above ground.
Okay, so in this tip, we're going tit for tat. Public transportation is an option.
It is, but the hop on, hop off bus will make sure that you not only have the transport, but also you get to listen to the cultural items in your little headphones. So you also get the learning behind just seeing if you're not using regular public transport.
Yes, that's a great addition. Thanks again for rocking with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for rocking with us as we embark on this journey. The Brannon Files podcast is a labor of love. Be sure to follow us on YouTube, IG, and Facebook at Brannon Files and check back for our next episode.